I get it. Redesigning your life is much easier said than done. And I had to come face to face with some real challenges that people may be having to actually making the change that they say they want. I recently had a conversation with a former colleague who gave me all the reasons why she was ready to leave this position. The position was causing her to experience mild anxiety, and she was just really dealing with a toxic environment. But when I, asked her, why won't you leave the position, take the next step? You are in a certain financial position, you can make the change. She provided a number of reasons that were not reasons that were not that could not be overcome. I have another example of a very, very close friend of mine who experienced an injury at work, and that injury has left her with physical, emotional, and mental challenges that she's still having to overcome. And she recently explained to me that she was looking forward to feeling better, and the reasons that she gave were not because she wanted to maybe explore another area of her career, or another area of her industry, not because she wanted to maybe even explore another part of her former employer, the actual company she worked for. She was looking forward to feeling better so that she can go back to the very same position in the very same department at the very same employer. And that made me realize that even though sometimes people experience challenges, maybe on the job or in different areas of their life, sometimes it's harder for them to, sometimes they'd rather go back to what they know than actually kind of stick their feet into the unknown, so to speak. So that's why I wanted to honor and accept, of course, that many people want to change their lives. They want to redesign their lives. But in many instances, they're just not ready. And this is something I've learned over the years. But the reason for this podcast was to help people who are ready, who may be ready to, just take that first step into a redesigned life, just help you understand how you can go about doing it, and of course sharing some examples of other people who've done this to help motivate and inspire you to make that change. So those two conversations were my wake up call that not everyone believes that they can actually redesign their lives because they have very real challenges and other kinds of roadblocks to overcome. My name is Patrice Davis. I'm the host of the Age Has No Limit podcast. And in this episode, we're really going to devote the time to sharing examples of folks who actually redesign their lives, folks in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and others who've actually radically redesigned their lives and are now living a life without limits. It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Age Has No Limit podcast. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. So you may be noticing that I'm in a different location, and that is because my redesigned life is really focused on finding ways to run my business, which is different, a part of the redesign from different parts of the world. So there are going to be instances where I'm hosting it from my home office, from my office that I have in the city where I live. Sometimes, of course, while I'm on location, either exploring a new city. And so the backgrounds are sometimes going to change. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of why things have changed. This is a one-time change. Maybe next week's episode will look completely different. So there are going to be, of course, instances where we host, where we have a guest on our show. And so that will be in a different environment as well. So maybe that's one of the ways to kind of shake things up. But let's get back to the episode. So first of all, as I talk about, redesigning one's life, or talking about how one can live a life without limits, I am always open to sharing my insight, my thoughts, my feelings, but this isn't about my experience alone. It's really important that I find other examples, either in my friend group or the women's groups and the business groups that I exist in, and I'm looking forward to getting all these people ready to come and share their experiences with you. Until then, what I do is I want to make sure that I'm able to find some real life, regular folk who've been able to do this. So I'm happy to see, though, that a lot has actually been written about this very topic. People in their 40s and 50s, I've seen it primarily for people in their 50s who have radically redesigned their lives. A lot of the content has been focused on changing your career. There's content talking about folks' second and third careers. But a career change isn't the only part of a redesigned life. There are some examples I have here for you that I'm really looking forward to sharing about people who've done exactly that, redesigned their lives in other areas of their life. Um, so I want to get started by talking about an article I found in The Guardian. For those of you who aren't aware, The Guardian is um, basically a news source. I believe they started out as an actual printed newspaper. I'm not sure if they're online and printed as well, but they're basically based out of the United Kingdom, out of the UK. And they have some really interesting articles. And so I found this article that was so interesting. It was called "Life Gets Better After 50." And it was written, it was an article that featured a Brookings Institute senior fellow by the name of Jonathan Rauch, who noticed that there was some changes in his life as he was approaching, his 50s. And it really focused quite a bit, that particular book, on the happiness curve. There's sort of like this U curve that, scientists and other researchers believe contribute to some ways that we feel in our 20s, 30s, and 50s. And according to scientists, that that U part of that curve is sort of in our 20s and 30s, where we're, according to scientists, not as happy, but we then start to go up on that U curve. We start to on that other side of the U in our 40s and 50s, and we tend to be happier. There's so many, as I'm thinking about it, there are many reasons why that could be the case. Maybe because you've already raised your children, and so a lot of the, you know, uh, time management, schedule management, and some of the concerns and stresses that come with raising children and raising children while being married in some instances, how sometimes that is no longer a part of your life when you're in your 50s, at least for many of us. And so I can see how you can feel freer, happier even in your 50s because you've moved out of that phase of your life. However, that's not the case for everyone. There's some people who maybe they are experiencing divorce, or maybe the death of a spouse, or unemployment or illness. And those are some instances where you can be in your 50s and, real life scenarios and situations. And so I don't want to make it seem like make a blanket statement that all of us in our 50s are happier. There are other experiences that many of us in our 50s are experiencing. So I just, again, want to acknowledge, honor, and respect that. Then I found a 2019 Washington Post article where where they were basically featuring, a number of women. I believe it was 8 women. And the article started out in an interesting way that I wanted to talk about. And that was, the perception that the world starts to tune women out once they reach their 50s. Prospective employers start to devalue their experience, the way that they are sometimes, you know the way that they sometimes, the characters of the 50-year-old women, they're always looking, they just seem to be unhappy. They're dealing with some kind of earth shattering experience in their lives. There aren't that many of them where they have characters in the media of women in their 40s and 50s and even 60s who are happy and content with their position in life. Now, I will briefly touch on, I believe, the movie with Julia Roberts. I think it was Eat, Pray, Love, and that was a huge hit with a lot of women. And if you've seen the movie, then you know why. But the idea is that how, most women actually, while the world wants to tune them out, they're actually typically freer and they're happier, maybe for some of the reasons that I cited earlier. And so many of them are thinking, okay, what do I do now? And many of them, myself included, decide that, maybe I can finally go after this career that I've always wanted to pursue, or maybe I can, take on this new hobby I've always wanted to pursue. Maybe I can just, whatever it is that they want to do, they can actually do that because they have the time, and in many instances, the disposable income, and also, again, a greater sense of freedom to be able to take on some of those challenges. So I just thought that article was really, really interesting. Now, we are also very aware of some of the, popular people, really, really popular people who, after 50, radically changed their lives and changed their career. So we know about Ray Kroc. He's an often cited example of a person who was, over 50 years old and changed, his life, changed the world. In fact, Ray Kroc, for those of you who don't know, is the person who started McDonald's. And so, of course, he had a huge impact on society. I won't debate, I won't go into debates about how great or not so great, in terms of the food and all of that, but just wanted to point him out as one of the more popular examples. Another example that I see cited quite a bit, of course, is Julia Child, who actually, interestingly, as I was preparing for this, I was really surprised to learn Julia Child used to work for the agency that used to be, that has now turned into the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and then, of course, became this popular chef. So now I'm really, really interested in seeing that movie, Julia and Julia. I'm not sure if that's the title, but I'm wondering if they cover that part of her life. I definitely want to take a look at that. So here's some other not so popular people that you may have heard of, but I found their stories really inspiring, and I wanted to make sure I featured them because they are not the popular folks, but one or two you may have heard of. So the first person I'm going to cite is Ernestine Shepherd. So Ernestine Shepherd is a champion bodybuilder. I believe she's in her 70s, and I've seen pictures of her for years now. And, she turned into a champion bodybuilder at, I don't remember the age she started. I believe it was maybe in her late 50s. She's now in her 70s and looks great. And again, she's a champion bodybuilder. So for those of you who feel, that maybe physically are able to, jumpstart your physical fitness regime, unless you have health challenges, just know that it is possible. And we have Ernestine Shepherd as an example. We also have Patricia Forehand, and she was an educator. It was an educator. And then she's now a comedian. Now, this article was written in 2019, right? So this was before everything, so many things changed between 2020 and 2022. So I'm not sure where she is now, but the article featured her, and she, changed from being an educator to a comedian. And I thought that was just fantastic because, to become a comedian, you think about it, you are devising, jokes in your head. You are probably rehearsing delivery. You're thinking about, the storytelling involved in kind of pulling the audience along before you're able to hit them with the punchline. Now, some would say, okay, well, she was an educator. She was used to standing in front of children, regardless of the age. And so now standing in front of an audience isn't that much of a, radical change. And I'm sure you all understand, of course it is, being a comedian has its own challenges. And again, I just shared several examples of what that might entail. The other example is Betty Levette. Now, she is a singer that after years and years, decades, in fact, from like the 1960s until finally the early 2000s, I believe, she had a budding career. So her career was budding for a number of decades. So she was always in that budding stage, not quite, reaching that point that she's always wanted to reach as a singer, a professional singer. But, finally, she was able to break through, I believe at the age in her 60s. I believe she even sang at President Barack Obama's either first or second inauguration. I don't recall. But it was just an example of a person who kind of kept at it. Not sure what she did in her professional life as she was also pursuing a singing career, but she held steadfast. She did it for decades and finally was able to sort of get her flowers, as they say. The other one is Iris Gomez. I thought this was a really interesting example. So Iris is a lawyer who became a novelist, and there were, I believe she said one of the two authors that she cited were inspirations were the author of Their Eyes Were Watching God, and I can't remember the name of the author. And this is not good that I can't remember the name of the author. I actually studied her book my first semester in college. Their Eyes Were Watching God. Guys, look it up. It's the name just escapes me. Zora Neale Hurston. Good. Whew, I don't get my black card taken. But her name is Zora Neale Hurston, and there is another author that she cited as an influence, and I can't recall that author's name. But I just thought it was interesting that this woman changed from being an attorney to, of course, being an author. And just imagine what that looks like. Preparing legal briefs, maybe representing clients, or maybe doing the work on the back end. I'm not sure exactly what kind of law her specialty was, but it's just, again, a wonderful example of a person thinking about what they really wanted to do, what really inspired them, and then taking the time to sort of slowly redirect that ship to doing what they want to do. This is something, as you can tell, is really, really interesting and makes my heart aflutter. I just love to hear about people, men, women, just making the changes that they want to make in their lives. And then figuring out a way to do it. So I just thought that I wanted to provide some examples. Now, what I wanted to do also, I always want to leave every episode with some tangible action items, some ways that you can use what I've, featured during the show to actually make some changes in your life, assuming you're ready for that change. And maybe some of the action items take you that much closer to making the change. So I have a list here of just everyday ways to jumpstart a no limit approach to your life. So the first thing I have is, of course, to create a bucket list. And I have a bucket list. I've been able to tackle one of the things on the bucket list. And that bucket list, for those of you who don't know, is a list of all the things you want to do, in your lifetime. So my one thing that on my bucket list that I was able to actually cross off that list was climbing Gros Piton. So Gros Piton, for those of you who don't know, is one of two, I forgot the technical term for what they are, but they look like mountains, on the beautiful, beautiful island of St. Lucia. And I hope to return there very soon. St. Lucia, Office of Tourism, hopefully you're hearing me here, but I hope to return to St. Lucia. I stayed at a very beautiful resort there. It's called Hotel Chocolat. And while I was there, I was able to climb Gros Piton. So I went to St. Lucia with with several intentions. Number one, to first see what it was really like to travel while working from anywhere in my new WFA work from anywhere business. And number two, to climb Gros Piton. Also, number three, to stay at Hotel Chocolat. It was beautiful. I saw, descriptions of of the hotel, videos of the hotel, and I was determined that that was the place where I was going to stay. There are other beautiful resorts on the island, but that one really spoke to me. So I was able to accomplish all three. But again, that bucket list item was climbing Gros Piton. That was 4 hours up, guided hike up to the top, not the very, very top, but almost the top of Gros Piton. No, I'm sorry, 2 hours up. Right. So that's 2 hours up, rocks, different types of terrain, different types of height, just it did a number on my knees. I got to tell you, when I came back, I could no longer run. For those of you who know some of the activities that I participate in, running, road races and what was something I enjoyed doing, and some of the things I enjoyed to stay fit. Came back from that St. Lucia trip and I was no longer able to run. But it was worth it. And then, of course, 2 hours down. Again, can you imagine going down again? It's a lot of engagement of certain muscles, and your knees are just doing so much hard work. But the point of the matter is, I crossed something off my bucket list. And then another thing, of course, is to conquer a fear. Maybe you're afraid of heights and you decide, I'm going to walk across maybe the Golden Gate Bridge, because you can actually walk across the Gate Bridge. Maybe you live in California, or whatever bridge may be nearby your hometown, and if there's a walking path, maybe you decide to walk across that bridge. Just take a deep breath, take each step, and walk across the bridge. You will feel so much better. So that's just an example. If the fear you have is a fear of heights, so just wanted to put that out there. Maybe you want to travel somewhere you've never been. I know that's always on top of my list, and I have just great places that I plan on exploring. Again, so the next time you see me, the background will look a little bit different, because that is something that is truly a priority of mine. And maybe it's not just traveling somewhere you've always been. Maybe it's traveling solo. Maybe you've always wanted to travel somewhere and your friends aren't ready to go, or your spouse is, may not want to join you. And so you decide to just take the trip on your own, and just think about all the fun it takes to stay where you want to stay, explore the restaurants and cafes you want to explore. Maybe stay in a really fun boutique inn, or explore the museums you want to explore, or just the fun of that is, again, maybe I'm getting a little bit overexcited, because that's just something that's important to me. So, all right, let me calm myself down from that. But maybe you want to write a blog about something that you're very interested in. So maybe starting a blog is that thing, because it gives you an opportunity to really take a deep dive every time you write a blog. And I've written a number of blogs. So for those of you who don't know, I actually started my first business called Seecurrents, spelled Seecurrents. And it is a website. It's still out there. And unfortunately, I don't do much with it, because I'm focused on my current business, which is a grant consulting business. And Seecurrents was a website that was devoted to finding culturally immersive things to do on islands around the world. So whether it was Cape Verde or Maui, or Seychelles or Zanzibar, what is that? Mallorca. I spent quite a bit of time researching things to do, local restaurants, museums to visit, all of these different things that I just really, really love doing that. And in addition to researching it and making it searchable, because I built it as a listing website, I also wrote blogs. And in many instances, I wrote blogs about places I hadn't visited. So I wrote some really, interesting blogs about visiting one of the Greek islands. I don't remember which one right now, but so just wanted to give you some examples of how writing a blog can give you an opportunity to kind of take a deep dive into whatever it is that you love. Travel is what I love. So writing blogs about travel was I really enjoyed that experience. As a result, I now write blogs for my consulting business, and write blogs for my coaching business. So writing about the business for me makes me speak more off the cuff about the topic at hand, whether it's traveling on islands around the world, or grant compliance, or coaching consultants on how to level up their consulting businesses. So I just wanted to give you that example. And then also, maybe you want to start journaling. Maybe you don't currently journal, but I mean, actually buy a book and actually use pen and write it out, if that's something that you're interested in giving a try, because it can sometimes reveal things that are in your mind that you hadn't fully explored, or may not have realized those thoughts existed. And connecting with friends from high school or from college. Maybe there are friends that you hadn't connected with in some time. Maybe you all were focused on raising your families or whatever it was that caused the great time divide. But now, maybe now's the time to reconnect with your friends. Another everyday way to jumpstart a no limit approach to life, or just do something different, and maybe it's a part of your life redesign, is to learn a new language. Maybe you've always wanted to learn Spanish or Chinese, specifically Mandarin, or maybe you've always wanted to learn Portuguese. Maybe so just wanted to give you some ideas of some things to explore. Maybe you want to take up yoga or Tai Chi. I'm going to share the example of my mom, who is in her 70s and about 10 years ago took up Tai Chi and became so good that she was actually invited to teach Tai Chi. She actually goes to a senior center that is well attended, has a really, really, really great slate of programs for seniors who go to that program. And Tai Chi is one of the classes that they offer, in addition to kickboxing and yoga and just a number of classes. And she was asked to teach that Tai Chi class because the Tai Chi teacher, who from what I understand was in her 80s, became ill. So I just wanted to give you an example of learning a new skill or a new way to move your body, a way to engage your body, or exercise. And she took up Tai Chi, and she loves it. As a matter of fact, she has recently returned to that senior center and has taken up chair yoga. So I just wanted to give you guys some examples of people who are making these changes and incorporating them into their everyday lives. And of course, one of the things you may want to consider, I don't know if this is a part of a life redesign, but maybe for some of us it is, and that is implementing a regular self-care routine. And I'm going to pause there because there are many of us who work really hard, long hours, or we devote so much of our time to others that we don't spend enough time focusing on our needs. And one of the ways that you can do that is to integrate self-care regimens into your life. I now get regular massages, 60-minute deep tissue massages. As a matter of fact, I have one scheduled for tomorrow in the destination where I am now, and I have another one that I'll more than likely schedule for 2 weeks from now. And certainly, so I make sure to integrate that into my life because it's the way that I care for myself, and a way that I eliminate stress, and just allow myself time to sit, be still, inhale the lavender and lemongrass that my masseuse typically has ready for me, and just allow my body to be kneaded into just a sense of calm. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were just thought about some everyday ways that you can integrate changes into your life, which will hopefully lead to a greater or larger life redesign, depending on what is important to you and, of course, what you would like to do. I know this is a pretty short episode. Actually, it's about the same, but I did want to share some examples of people who've actually changed their lives, and then, of course, provides everyday ways that you can actually integrate life changes into integrate changes into your life, little things that maybe you hadn't thought about doing that maybe you can start doing now so that you can begin a broader life redesign. I also want to end this episode with a quote that I found that was very, very interesting. And it's a quote from Hosea Ballou. And I thought it was just really interesting. And I thought it very, very fitting for this episode, and actually for almost every episode. And the quote is, 40 is the old age of youth. 50 is the youth of old age. And so, I just thought that was really apropos for what this show is about, what this podcast is about. And that is really for those of us that are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even older, to really think about how age is truly a number, and the way that we live our lives is really up to us, and we can actually redesign it to fit the vision that we've always had, especially now as we approach what we call freer stages of our lives, freer, happier stages of our lives. We certainly have the opportunity to live a life without limits, because again, age has no limits. So the final point I wanted to make was something that I thought I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. I have mentioned before that I have two businesses. One is Grants Works, a grant consulting business. The other is Ready, Set, Go Consult, and it is a business accelerator for early stage consultants. So that's early stage independent consultants, freelance consultants, whatever name they want to, give themselves. That they are actually consultants who work with businesses to help businesses whatever it is that they may achieve whatever it is that they may specialize in. One of the things I notice is that many of the people in the program are people in their late 40s and 50s. These are people with, decades, 1 to 2 decades of experience, expertise, skills, and knowledge. And they want to take that knowledge and then, of course, launch and, leverage and scale successful consulting businesses. I've even had a former mayor of a mid-sized city in that program. And the reason, and of course, he is in that age group. I brought that up because these are people who are actually redesigning their lives by, leaving their 9 to 5, leaving their employer, by launching their consulting businesses using these skills, knowledge, experience, and expertise that they have. So I just wanted to give you some examples of, I guess that would be the last set of examples of people who have decided that they wanted to take their lives into their hands and, begin a new phase in their lives that is driven by them, and of course they're not necessarily answering to an employer or responding to what society says that they should be doing. I want to end by letting you know that I enjoy bringing these podcast episodes to you each week. And I'm looking forward to having some of our guests that we've invited join us to share how they redesign their lives. I also want to remind you, and this is very important, something for you to remember until the next episode. Age indeed has no limit.